Welcome to the Inferno Cast. Today's guest is actually in the Black Belt Hall of Fame. He trained personally with the Grandmaster of the Ninja for over 20 years, and he founded the martial art Toshindo, and he has written 22 books. It is Mr. Stephen K. Hayes, the first American ninja. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. The lockdown is not affecting Rumiko and me. We got a lot of room here, acres of woods to roam around, so we're just having a ball.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that because it's definitely a unique time, but I appreciate it because it brought me together with some people in my life that are friends and acquaintances, and especially with you because you were a major influence on me as a kid that kind of got me into martial arts a little bit more serious. So I definitely appreciate the time and talking with us, and we kind of hope to learn some good stuff about you today, which kind of leads to my first question of what was your first introduction to martial arts as a kid that kind of made you intrigued of this is something I want to do?
Well, back in the mid 1950s, there was a Lassie TV show. It was about this dog and, lived on a farm. And in this show, there was a Japanese exchange student who came to live on the farm. Now, this is just like 10 years after World War II. This Japanese exchange student and, farmyard bullies were bullying him, and he used this karate and judo to defend himself. Oh, man, did that look great. I was like a would-be protector, kind of. I would see kids get picked on and bullied. I wasn't really bullied so much, but I would see other kids, but I didn't know how to fight. I didn't know what to do about it. I knew this was wrong. I felt sorry for these kids, but I wasn't a little tough guy or anything like that. This was my first introduction to, hey, there's something that other people don't know out there, and I'm going to get it.
That's awesome. So how did you get it? How did you go find it? What did that look like at that age? I mean, because I'm sure in the 50s, like you said, post-World War, people are trying to kind of get back to normal, and being a kid in those times, what was the resources you were able to find?
It took me 12 years of looking around and wanting this. And I finally, 1967, I went to Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and there was a Navy commander who had a Tang Soo Do group there. Now, this is way back before anybody knew about martial arts, and he'd been in Korea in the Korean War and picked up a couple degrees of black belt. And I wasn't in the Navy, but I managed somehow to talk him into letting me train with them, and that was my beginning at age 17. And I ate it up. I just loved it, and so that was my start. That was my start.
So how did you end up in Japan learning ninjutsu?
Well, when I was studying Tang Soo Do, I got a hold of this book. It was published by Black Belt Magazine. It was all about the ninja, and oh man, this was what I really wanted to do. But I just figured I was born on the wrong side of the Pacific, and how would you find these guys? Now, this is back before there was any internet, email, nothing. You had to write little letters. And so somehow I just was so obsessed with this that in 1975, I think I had like a second or third degree black belt in Tang Soo Do and was teaching this, but I was really pulled, got on a plane, just went to Japan and hoped to find the hidden Grandmaster of the Ninja. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy?
Oh my gosh. So you didn't have any information, no reference materials. You're just like, hey, this plane goes to Japan. I'll do that.
Basically, that was it. Yeah. Oh God, it was crazy. And magical things happen. I just happened to meet this person who knew that one. And I took this train, and I happened to meet, this innkeeper who was a friend of the Grandmaster's mother. They were childhood friends, and she knew this Grandmaster. I just happened to pick that in. I mean, it's magical. I'm supposed to be there kind of things.
Yeah. Well, how was that? How was the progression whenever you show up out of nowhere, this American? Because that had to have been kind of a faux pas for tradition and just culturally, something that, there had to have been some challenges to overcome with that.
That's true, Caleb. 2 points. One, I learned over the ensuing years, this Ninja Grandmaster, he's a real iconoclast. He's out there, which you would expect for a ninja Grandmaster as opposed to a samurai tradition. He was just a wild man. So that was one. He thought it was funny that I just showed up. I wrote letters and he didn't reply. And he just said, "Oh, no, I knew you'd be here." So I didn't write back. And the second point was I didn't find out till years later. So I was really honored. They just accepted me and they, let me train with them. And so I was talking years later to one of my fellow training members. So I was 25 when I got there, and these other guys were in their 20s. We're all in our 70s now. But this guy was a colonel in the Japanese army. They call it self-defense force, but it's army. And my Japanese wife, was talking with this guy, and she said, "Oh, yeah, Stephen was really honored, that you had accepted him so easily." And this colonel goes, "Oh, is that what he thought happened?" And she said, What? He goes, "Oh, no. For our generation, he was a big guy. And we thought we could try all our techniques out on him. After a week or two, he's going to be so sick of us, he's going to go back home and we can get back to training."
So you were just a big practice dummy for them.
I was a big practice dummy. And I thought, man, these guys train rough, but geez, the stuff is so fabulous.
Oh yeah,
I,
it's
I didn't
the
know.
ignorance
So
of
I
youth.
just hung around for years.
The ignorance of youth. I had a friend I trained with back when I was just a kid, like 17, 18, wanting to get MMA, and he was fighting MMA, and he tells the story of how he used to beat me up so bad. He's like, "Yeah, man, I tried to make him quit every day," and I was like, "What, really?" I just thought that was normal, I was like, I didn't know that it was any more abusive than what it should have been. I'm like, we're MMA fighters, right? I'm trying to be tough, and just impacted me at the right time of my life, and that's so funny that just your diligence puts you in a
Well,
pretty
there's something we share, Caleb. I
yeah.
mean, look at that. So many decades later, you went through the same thing. You didn't question it. And
Yeah,
I'm sure there are other people watching this that have similar stories.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely,
teacher didn't really care about him. I mean,
yeah,
let's be honest. Uh, teacher was looking out for himself. He thought this is a good training dummy. Uh, they didn't explain the whole thing to you. I'm sure there are other viewers who can identify with yours and my
absolutely, yeah.
experience like that.
Well, and when you look at it too, like the martial arts journey, it kind of attracts that young masculinity, show what I can do, look how powerful I am. That egocentrism that comes with it sometimes can trickle into that instructorship because, you train martial arts long enough, pretty soon you're the instructor, and sometimes they don't mature as quickly as they could as leaders, so they're still there to kind of get theirs. And so you just become a part of their experience, which then in turn becomes your experience. But I think with age and maturity, you see those athletes and those martial arts guys, they grow out of that and they start seeing that there's something bigger than themselves with what they're doing. And I think that's where the mastery kicks in of people that are a part of martial arts and what it can do for their lives. Which, so for you in this group and your training, was there a transition where it was no longer show up and be overwhelmed and kind of get beat up to where it became, like, okay, I understand what's happening. I understand the bigger idea of what I'm learning? Because I think there's a lot of, misconceptions about what ninjutsu stands for, what that style was about, what it really meant, because we see the movies. So, if you could paraphrase kind of your transition into understanding what it was truly about.
Hmm. Well, I was 25 when I got there, and you put it very well. You put it very well. I wondered how good I was. I had some competition, but I wasn't a champion. I trained with some tough guys. I trained with some not so tough guys. I wondered how good am I, and so I just kept pushing that envelope. And the odd thing about the ninja martial art is uh, these were not necessarily the battlefield winners. These were intelligence gatherers, especially when I first started training. So the idea was you're not going to fight. You're going to go in somewhere. You're going to get intelligence. Nobody knows you were there. You might be disguised as a repairman or the tea maker or something like that, and you get out. If your cover is blown, you need to disengage in such a way that you don't kill or maim the other person, because now they have they know you were, dangerous. So they're
Hmm.
after you. So it looks like a mistake, almost looks like an accident. Escape, get out of there. And so from my standpoint, it was a couple of years, I would say maybe 3 or 4 years before this dawned on me. I kept comparing it to my Tang Sudo, which is a very linear, forward, power, this kind of style. The ninja martial art was all about, ducking, evading, setting up angles. It is not a clash thing at all. That's whoop, whoop, we're over here now.
Right.
Took about 3 or 4 years where all of a sudden I got it. Now I was 30 years old, moved like a 70-year-old. Just stay cool, a little back foot move this way, nothing dramatic, nothing martially.
Yeah.
Uh, huh. And since then I've pursued this very natural movement, grappling, striking weapons, even using the mind, using the
Hmm.
heart.
So it's basically what we think it is, which of course, has been skewed by media, is you become a ninja to throw stars, dress in black, and do sword fights. But the theology behind it is a little bit more of a, avoidance. It's almost like spy work, as far as you kind of describe, like, if you're gathering intelligence, and especially the time frame of culture in which they were doing that, the information was more important than anything. So escaping and evading, because whatever you saw or learned, your job was to get it back to people to know, and like you said, to maybe not tip them off, because if you're in disguise and sloppily get away from an altercation with somebody where you don't look like a expert, you don't look like an assassin, something like that, then it's going to be less conspicuous to where they're not tipped off, because you have to think about it as like, this was probably designed more for a military type application, right?
Yeah, yeah, very much. Today, like in an MMA, two guys in a ring, and each guy knows what the other guy's there to do. He's here to beat me. I'm here to beat him, and so we use our strategy and our skill and our athleticism and our coaching. And but this ninja martial art was a completely different world. It was a
Mm-hmm.
team of people gathering intelligence, some sabotage, maybe starting rumors to upset the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, sometimes a ninja leader would send out 3 different teams, not tell them, or tell them, hey, you might run into somebody claiming they're working for me, but
Mm-hmm.
you're the one.
Yeah.
So they get 3 sets of intelligence back. If one is radically different than the other two,
Right.
I flushed out uh, a double agent.
Yeah.
God, how to think about all of that. No, it's a very broad-based military kind of
Yeah.
strategy.
And I think that looking through it with that lens, makes it more logistical almost, like where it kind of makes sense, because if you're looking at running a military of what you have to do, and because if you look at, especially with the television media, the ninjas still exist, but now they're just James Bond movies, where like it's the spy and he sneaks in and they kind of know who he is, and then a few fancy moves, but but when you look at it from that military
Yeah.
operation, um, that I think that grounds it into something a little bit more real for people to understand where you're coming from. Like if you're training a military group, you have specialized people that do very specific things. They operate as a team. They all have kind of a baseline skill set, but there's specializations that exist, as far as like the weapons guy, the communications guy, the intelligence person, like um, that that makes sense to look at it that way. So as you trained for all these years, and you're getting a little bit older and you become more of a leadership role, when did you decide to start publishing books and sharing the information with the world, on a more public forum?
Oh, I actually started in 1978, wrote my first book, 1978. Uh, it's still available through
Yeah.
Tuttle Publishing Company. Uh, and I wrote 20 books, but a lot of the books were in my early part of the career, my 30s and into my 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, then I did a lot more work with DVDs. And then in the past 10 years, I've started to write more books again. And, it's interesting when I look back at that 1978 book, I had like 3 years of training experience. You would think that, oh man, I'd see mistakes or identifying. Nope, I still stand behind that book 100%.
Do you
It
think that it
was,
holds up because it was so closely connected to that experience? Like you wrote it so soon, for that experience. Do you think that it holds up because it was like it was in the moment and you documented that experience, and that's kind of what helped it kind of stand the test of time because it was so authentic?
I think that was it. I did that with all of my books. I wrote it from my experience. So there were stories, and a lot of the stories, I was the butt of the joke, so people read this, it's kind of engaging. They're kind of there with me. I think that's one of the reasons these books were such mega bestsellers in the 80s. Um, it was unusual for a martial art book to have stories in there. I wasn't just teaching how you hit somebody or whatever. Uh, I I recounted how I learned about this. You know, oh, I thought I understood, and then I would go through a lesson and realize, no, I don't understand. Here's what it's bigger, it's more important, it's more significant than I had thought. And I think people like that. These books were like mega bestsellers in the 80s. Um, I didn't even have a job. I had no dojo. I just lived off of book royalties. I wasn't a
Yeah.
billionaire, but
Right. Yeah.
these things sold so many that I could just travel all around and train. And my wife and I would go back to Japan twice a year. And so I think that also was a choice that I made, with this, I'll call it humility or whatever. It was very weird in the martial arts.
Mhm.
Everybody was like puffed up. Oh, I'm Grand Shihan so and so, and I just came in. Hey, I'm this guy trying to learn this martial art. I'm the one who knows the least amount in the dojo, and I'd go to a seminar, and it was just so different. This martial art was so different. People didn't know how to relate to it, so it was very easy to beat people,
Yeah.
and then they go, "Oh gosh, I need to study this. If he could beat my super duper, you know, double penetration punch, and he just ate it up." No, it was just different. It was just
Yeah.
different, and So I think that humility amused people. It took away that natural resentment of, hey, who is this guy? And they were willing to go along with what was reported in the books.
Yeah, and it made you very approachable, and people could almost identify with you that maybe weren't high level martial artists, that were beginners. Just like for me, I was a kid with my parents, and we were in Tennessee, and we stopped at some yard sale, and we bought some magazines because there's some martial art magazines, and your 1981 Black Belt magazine was in there, where the whole feature was on you. And so all of this road time, I'm reading that thing. I read it probably 6 times on that trip. And I was hooked. I was like, I'm going to be a ninja. This is my life. Because I'm like 8 or 9. And, that was just such an impact on me.
Mm.
Is just, seeing you in those pictures and just the stories. And so that's when I kind of became a fan. And because that was it, I was able to connect. And it inspired me of like, you know what? This guy he can go to Japan. He can go train with ninjas. I can do the same thing, regardless of what that is. And it kind of gave me hope of what I could achieve. And that was the first time in my life that I saw the world larger than my neighborhood. I was just, because that was the first time that I thought there's other countries, there's other things you can learn in other places of the world. So your works not only inspired people like martial arts wise, but just their view of the world, which that would be my next question is, when did martial arts transcend for you into the rest of your life to where you felt like, man, me being a martial artist is bleeding over into these other parts of my life, and I can really see that now?
No, that's really, I mean, isn't that the key? I mean, you can hang out in a training hall until you're too old to move, and martial arts becomes kind of an escape for some people, I think. You know, life isn't working, got no relationships, can't keep a job, got no money. Yeah, but I'm a badass guy, and that's kind of sad. So for me, in my early 30s, I was researching my teacher's teacher. So this was the 1800s guy. I never met him. He died like a year and a half before I got to Japan in 75. But he was like bigger than life. He was in China in the early 1900s when it was the wild, wild East. And he came back and we're not supposed to say this, but anyway, he had a little run in with the Japanese mafia. And so he hid out in the mountains for quite a while, and he discovered this spiritual teacher who was living in a cave, in the mountains. And he was studying this thing called Shugendo, which is sort of a blend of some Shinto and imported Buddhism, and just how you live in the world, how you figure things out, how do you work with energies, how do you promote yourself. And I became really fascinated with this. So we got combat on one hand, yeah, but on the external, and the internal development on the other hand, both in one martial art. Oh, this was fascinating. And so that actually became one of the two driving forces in my life, this idea of personal development. How do we start with our doubts? We all have doubts about ourselves. We all have secrets. And we maintain a certain look out in the community, but it may conflict with secretly, well, if people knew this about me, well, let's churn that up. Where did those come from? Where did those attitudes? Well, obviously, as a small child with your parents and teachers and religious leaders and community, these things all developed. How's it working for you today? Is this working for you? Are there alternatives that could take you further? Oh, so I would say that was in my early to mid 30s when that really came home to me.
What were the steps that you started to use to, follow that path of improvement? Because there's a lot of people that they don't know where to start. they feel the overwhelm. Life is winning, they're not. They don't have opportunity. They're in a very poor perspective of what is available to them. What are some of the starting steps that you learned that you could kind of share with those people on how to get some momentum?
Hmm. It's a tough question because when I was 34, I met the Dalai Lama of Tibet and forged a relationship with him. So just go meet the Dalai Lama
Right.
and
That's a pretty
hang
high
out with
bar.
him for 20 years and you'll get it. You'll get it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's really the truth. Wild how life works, isn't it? Just wild. And so that gave me the balance to my martial studies. Um, Kind of tough to meet the Dalai Lama these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah.
So I would suggest to somebody who really wants to start, there probably are some books, and I can't recommend any names, but maybe like a self-help or personal development type books, and speed read through these
Hmm.
things. Now the tough thing is, in an era of self-publishing, there's a
Hmm.
lot of garbage books out. Oh, they're badly edited and they don't have anything to say, but man, these guys are promoting their books and they're worthless. So it's very hard. Um, Maybe without a book, just start with a look at what consistently comes up in my life that gets in my way or cancels out good stuff. I think you'll see trends repeat themselves. So
Hmm.
I'm bad in relationships. Oh, why do you pick those people to be in relationships with? Uh,
That's a good question.
and oh, I can't keep a job. What do you do that turns employers against you? Uh, oh man, I can't hang on to money. Well, what do you believe about your worthiness to have? Anyway, oh, very painful.
Scary questions.
Very
Yeah, those are
painful.
scary questions. Most people don't want to face those questions, and which is kind of probably why they're in their predicament, a little bit of denial. Is that
Oh,
something that you work with your students now, especially the last 20 years of your life? Is that a focus and a priority when you work with students and people that you train in the martial arts?
well, that's a very good question. We have four what we call elements: earth, water, fire, and wind, that represent different modes of movement. And they reflect these four different kind of centers, or how I respond in a fight. So some people just hold their ground. They're just sluggers. Boom, boom, hold ground and repel. And others do the opposite. They just abandon ground. They go over to where they need to be. And so that starts this process. Where are you? Where are you? Uh, if you're under pressure, you can't do it in the dojo. You have to look at outside life. You're under pressure of conflict or confrontation. Where do you go? What do you do? Okay. Uh, all of these weaknesses can become powers. And then the second part is we have lists of, we have a three-part student, I call it the Seeker's Creed. The three things you've got to keep in mind whenever you're doing anything dangerous. Uh, then there's a 14-point code of mindful action that is kind of like an ethics code, where people can examine. Don't accept it, just examine it. I protect life and health. I avoid violence whenever possible. That's one of them. Okay, check it out. Hey, look at a violent person. Maybe they, maybe it works for them. Does it always work for them? Uh, and look how carefully we worded it. I avoid violence whenever possible. We're studying violence, how to quell violence, actually. So I'm going to use it if I need to, but I avoid violence whenever possible. So I'm in a conflict with somebody, I can go, oh man, I am so sorry. I made you so mad. I'm screwing up 3 times today. Let me get my truck, take off. You get in your truck. You know what I mean? Just give it a shot. Give it a shot. We have 8 points of personal development. That's from the inside that we examine. There's a 6-point hero code, how to live a heroic life. And so we are constantly exposing the students to these considerations in addition to the physical technique they're working on.
The mental growth with the physical growth. And I feel like that is so important because a lot of times I feel that when you see martial artists, the mental growth comes as a byproduct of the physical growth. Like, it's not as intentional. It's like you do martial arts for your whole life, and sooner or later, you're going to get some mental skills that develop because of the physical lessons you always learn. But you making that a priority on the front end of the mental development with the physical development, that seems to be a good match in a pair. And especially for a lot of people that seek martial arts for entertainment, therapy, or to do it, like their motivation of why they are there. And a
Yeah.
lot of those people are there because they've got some struggles or some issues in their life that they do need some mental skills as well as physical skills. Do you feel like that you see that a lot?
Yeah, I think so. And when people come in, they don't say that.
No.
Oh, I think, oh, I get in shape, maybe learn a little self-defense. Oh man, I spend my day chained to a tin desk. I want to just be, I think I want to be a ninja, and they'll make all these light comments, but we have people write an essay, 2 or 3 pages to get a black belt. It's part of their black belt.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing what people tell me after 4 years of training. Hey, no, I was abused as a child, or I was raped, or I was in a terrible relationship, or God, my dad didn't respect me. And wow, I had no idea. They're not going to tell me, but they got the value from practicing bravery, physical technique, and this mental aspect of these codes and creeds that we have, and they elevate their life. They elevate their life. Now, these aren't going to be champions. I think to train to be a champion, a world champion, that's a whole different world. That's a different world. I know a lot of world champions, and some of them are pretty out of balance characters, to tell the truth. String of ex-wives and living in little teeny dumpy apartments. And but I do know some who are just the most peaceful, these are world champion fighters. Peaceful, funny, enjoyable people. They get in the ring, boom, they become tigers. Not in the ring, don't need to be a tiger. You can be a pussycat.
Yeah, they have that balance, and because that goes back to that, what brought people into martial arts, which sometimes brings them into competitive fighting, is, are you there to test yourself, or are you there to prove to everyone else? Seems to be
Wow.
the question. And,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
because even as martial, like for myself, I can remember getting into martial arts. A lot of it was, especially as a kid, because it was cool and it was neat. And a lot of my motivation was the appreciation and value that it would bring me when people could see how good I was. Like, look at what I can do. And even when I started fighting MMA when I was a kid, 18, 19, the drive was to show everybody else. And there was a piece of it that was internal. Like, I wanted to test myself. And the more I trained and the more I competed, the more it became internal of like, I appreciate my opponents. I'm thankful they train hard because I wanted to get better and better. And then one day, which I'm sure you'll probably be able to identify with this, and you can maybe shine some light on this. One day, it was no longer about me. And it was about the team and the group and my community of like my students,
Wow.
and just everything transitioned. So, from your perspective of a lifelong martial artist, what do you feel like that transition was for me? Because I'm sure other people go through it. I'm sure you went through it as well. What can you identify that as when people shift to where it's not about themselves anymore? What do you feel like that is?
Well, when you're 18, 19, um, biologically, we've separated from our parents when we were like 14 or 15. I mean, we still live with them, but biologically, we start to put some distance. We start to turn outward and, hey, what do my peers think of me? Am I a weirdo, or am I popular, or am I just tolerated? And we sort of adjust our behavior to where we want to be. So if I do something like really goofy or boneheaded, and everybody goes, "Oh man, oh God, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do that again." So we pattern ourselves around the people that we spend time with. So it's very logical. We start martial arts. Hey, I want feedback here. I want admiration. I want adoration. I want appreciation. I want acknowledgement. I'm doing my best here. Right, right. So it's a very natural tendency to go through. We move ahead a little bit. Oh, and some people never outgrow that. I know some people older than me that are still dominated. Yeah, by what the audience thinks. And I said, God, geez, you're a little old to be doing this, aren't you? Oh, I'm gonna make my comeback. Oh, gee, but you never outgrew that, how we're brought up, the kind of community we live in, the people we surround ourselves with. I know some people who've made like wild radical breaks with their community. I don't believe in what this community stands for. I'm bigger than this. So they just divorce themselves from the community and find a new community that's more upbeat, that's more positive, that's more loving. I got to admire those people. They could do that. Eventually, we balance out. We balance out. We realize that a lot of the adoration we're getting is from people that don't matter to us. Look at a YouTube video. Here's the opposite. YouTube video. Read the comments. Oh God! Oh man, I could armbar this guy in a second. Oh, he looks terrible. Where all of these poor losers are sitting there, at 1 a.m. typing this stuff. Oh man, I could tap him out. Now there they are, so concerned with what everybody thinks about them. Kind of the opposite of that. So where do you find the personal peace? I think this may be a little different for each person. It was different for you. You mentioned at a certain point, the community and what you're doing with the students becomes so important. Now, it's still important for you to keep up your skills. You're going to keep progressing, but you become bigger. I'm not focused on being a fighter. I'm a fighter. I beat this guy or he beats me. I'm a fighter. Oh, warrior. Oh, now I got some other people I'm thinking about. I'm a protector. I take care of these other people. Sage. Oh, you get way out here. Now you can take anybody and you've got the lesson for them. There's somebody who comes in and they're a timid little person. You tell them, every time you throw a punch, just roar from the gut. Let the lion out, You get another guy that's all irritated and he flies off the handle and gets mad so easy. Hey, here's your first lesson. When something is about to send you into action, grin just a little bit. Take a deep breath in. Let it go out and say, you're not tricking me. You're not tricking me. Wait a minute. Totally different lessons, with totally different people. And that now. You know how to bring out the best, in people using the martial arts as your base.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like that you've been able to spread the martial arts for the world. You're definitely one of the leaders of the industry with with the ninjutsu craze that took over the world, and to have somebody from our own country out there to be one of the communicators and leaders producing the books and making the videos, because I know you have inspired millions of people to become martial artists. I mean, I know a lot of kids that were bouncing around on their furniture throwing paper ninja stars because of what you did. So it definitely has been a positive influence, and I value the fact that you're still in the industry and you're still investing in people and pouring into them. Is there anything you would like to finish with?
Oh gosh. I'm 70, so I only have about 30 more years to go, you know.
Hey, maybe 40, never know.
Maybe. But I'm more excited today than I've ever been. You know, we're doing things with internet now. NinjaLife.tv. NinjaLife.tv are some of my top guys, and we've all gotten together and we put these videos together out, and we've got quite a collection. So if somebody's interested, they could go to NinjaLife.tv. Just had my 22nd book that came out. It's called, it's from Tuttle. It's got a bright orange cover. It's available from Amazon. Ninja Fighting Techniques. They came up with a title. I would want to have a more inspiring title, but Ninja Fighting Techniques. So that book just came out last month. Okay. And it's kind of an intermediate book, but it also deals with how to size up people in a fight. Are they just yapping instead of slapping? Or are they bluffing? Or, you know, what to watch for when somebody's ready to go? Takes a look at this issue of bullying. I'm not real popular with my school systems because of the way I see this. The way they're handling bullying is not working, but they have to do it. So I have some advice in there, all in this Ninja Fighting Techniques book. So my wishes for everyone is, you know, find yourself through the martial arts. Get even more involved. What one new little thing can you learn in your next class, whether it's online class or, you know, we're restored, we're going back to the dojo. Every day you go in there, think, I want to get one new thing, and just see what that is every time you train.
Oh, that's great. I love that constant improvement, pushing forward. I love your full circle approach to physical and mental, and like I said, you've definitely been a positive influence, and I appreciate the time today. Just want to say thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Hey, thank you so much, Caleb. I really enjoyed this conversation. Some questions I've never been asked before, so a lot of fun. Thanks so much, Caleb.
Thank you.